Awesome. So, all right, we will kick this off with me sharing a screen here. Let's see, how quickly and easily I can do that. Of course, it's not quick and easy because where's my share screen button? Oh, there we go. So, like I said, there's just a couple slides here. And then we will jump over to the worksheet to really like dig into the elements of an artist statement. That was something that honestly evaded me very early on. I was like, I don't understand what this is. And so now that I've had more practice at exactly what that is, I also just created a worksheet that I hope will be advantageous to you all as well as you are getting started on fellowship and residency applications. So, without further ado, I'll just jump into some of this content. Like I said, these are just a couple slides, and then we'll move over to the worksheet. So just to kind of ground us in like the fact that there's different types of residencies, right? And so basically, when we're talking about a residency, we are talking about you actually traveling, going somewhere to write, right? We know that you don't need a residency to actually finish your work. You actually just need a pen and paper or a laptop in a chair, preferably a table, but you don't even need that, right? We know that at the bare minimum, you can get your work written whether you're at a fancy residency or not. However, there are a lot of benefits from being a part of a residency, and we'll, talk about what some of those are. But just as we get into the types, I think it's important to understand them too, because I just started going on them, not understanding exactly what I was actually going to be doing there. I was just like showing up, like, thank you for accepting me. But the difference is that some are generative, right? So when we talk about generative fellowships and residencies, that you're going to focus on coming up with new ideas that you'll probably end up exploring more once you actually leave the residency, right? So these types of residencies are like, workshops where you're like thinking of new ideas or like exploring like your own personal, like excavating your personal stories, etc., to kind of figure out what you actually want to write about. They're more like gonna provide you with instruction that has like exercises. So for instance, one of the generative residencies that I had, it was all about like we did a exercise where it was like write a description around an object, right? Or like write your first line 10 different times, right? Like kind of these practical things that might not get you like 30 written pages during the residency, but will get your mind really working and thinking. And so the practical way, for instance, from that workshop, I was able to take like a scene I was writing about a ball in a backyard and like literally put the whole scene into a work in progress after the fact because I was just in a creative mode around other creative people, and I just feel like it helped me to expand just my knowledge about like what was possible in a story. And then you have workshop-based residencies where you're actually going to come with work that's going to be reviewed. And so that's a little different because you have to submit work prior to the residency so that you give your peers as well as your instructor, because oftentimes there's going to be an instructor that's going to read your work as well, give them time to actually read through the work. And then you're going to also be responsible for peer reviewing other people's work. So, there have been residencies where I received a packet and then I had to read through everything critically and be able to share feedback. And then there's a bunch of kind of best practices around workshopping, right? Like one of the most important things being like, it's not your story. So it's not about you trying to rewrite their story as much as what I thought was really helpful was like literally just asking questions, because it's more about helping the author kind of understand their story objectively and make sure that the things that they're thinking are actually showing up on the page. So, very important to kind of ensure that you give yourself enough time. because you want to be just as thoughtful with other people's work as they are with yours. Because the gems that I've gotten from my workshops have completely helped me break through on certain work that I was working on. So, and then there's also just solo type residencies where you're literally going to a barn in the middle of nowhere to live your life. And maybe there's maybe there's some meals involved. Maybe you're still provided with meals. And you kind of maybe some of them, for instance, like a hedge brook or something like that, there might be multiple people there at a time, but you're really kind of having your solo time, and then the only time you do come together is for meals. Or you just have ones where it's just you in a cabin in the woods, okay? And so those are interesting. I'm not sure that I've applied to some of them, but I'm not sure after I applied to them, I kind of felt like maybe I wouldn't really thrive of just being in the woods. I need a little city, at least in walking distance. But these are really can be really helpful because they take you to a remote area where you can kind of turn off life. And we could talk about how like sometimes it can be distracting to be with other people, because there's also like a social element to this that's happening as well. And so I could see the advantage to possibly being isolated, quiet time for a week to literally just bang out your work. That is what I feel like I'm currently in need of. Like I'm currently in need of like a week just to like not speak to humans and finish my book. And then last but not least, there is hybrid, which is some mix of those things, right? So, you have different residencies that might have a mix of like there's workshop, there's instruction, there's craft talks, there's a lot of different things going on, and you'll have to determine what you feel like might be best for you. So just to talk about some of my personal residency experience, Torch Literary Arts, I was an inaugural fellow for Torch when they first started their um, residency program, which was amazing. This was more of a relaxed work at your own pace. Like the whole thought behind it was like, one, it was a small cohort, so there were just six of us, and it was actually at a hotel in Austin, Texas. And a lot of it was really about our ability to like, if we wanted to lay by the pool that day, it really was like, one, I think I was spoiled because it felt, it felt like a luxurious retreat experience. Because it felt like we were being cared for as artists. And that was like such a beautiful thing. It felt like someone believed in my art enough to give me, like, to invest in me, and we were actually also paid a stipend to attend the retreat, which we'll talk about cost in the next slide. But it took a lot, it took us away from the daily pressures of life. We were provided meals for ourselves. I don't know about you, but sometimes even just thinking of something to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is taxing. And so this really takes that away and kind of helps you live in your creativity. And Amanda's vision for the retreat was not gonna be like vigorous, like you had to write 10 pages a day or whatever. It was like however you need to be cared for. And it was a beautiful experience in that way. I also was able to attend Anaphora, which was in Italy. And this was certainly more generative, with the workshops and things. We took different trips. So we stayed in Lucca, but we were able to go to Florence and Pisa for these outings. One of our workshops kind of incorporated us taking in a museum and then writing about some of the things that were happening at the museum. We were at these two beautiful villas. We were supposed to stay at one villa, but there were some maintenance issues that needed to happen. And so we ended up having to be at two different villas that also kind of had, that pool life and gardens. And we stayed both of these residencies, we did stay with roommates. Actually, I think every residency that I had a roommate. At Torch, it was a suite, so it was great because there were like two different rooms, but we just shared like the living space. And then at Anaphora, it was there were different rooms, but like I got to stay in the cottage. So it was a big villa with big grounds, and so I got to stay in a cottage. Also, my roommate and I had two different rooms, but we shared the bathroom in the living space. And then also at Kimbilio, I had a roommate. Now, some of these you can request a solo room, often at more of a charge. I'd be like, look, I get it. I'm that some people might want to be alone, but I will sacrifice to save myself some cash. Because again, we'll talk about cost, but everything's gonna cost you something unless they're paying you like Torch did, right? And so, but even if you're a fellow, those costs can vary. But anyway, last but not least was Kimbilio, which I've done most recently. So that was last August 2025. And Convilio has been going on for a long time, but they originally were meeting in New Mexico and then had moved the residency to North Carolina just last year for the first year. And we were staying up a mountain. Barely any cell phone service. I kind of was like trying to talk to my husband in the parking lot, getting the right spot. And it was very remote and very beautiful. Like the first couple of days, there was overcast. And so it was actually kind of hard to see how impressive the space was. But that like second or third day, the clouds cleared and it was breathtaking, right? And I don't know about you all, but like I am big on place. And I just had this revelation this morning. Honestly, I was like, oh girl, like you are like you love place as a theme in your work. It's like every story takes place in a place, but what I realize is like when I see different places, I want to write about it. Like it is so like most of my stories have been like these places that I've been that I was like, oh, I gotta write about this. And so I'm very inspired by like landscapes and nature and the beauty of things. And so Kimbilio kind of put us in that. And that was a workshop driven um residency in that we read each other's work and gave feedback. And we also had instruction classes and readings and all the things that kind of take place at a lot of these things. But the main focus was really being able to workshop some of your work, which was great. And the cool thing about Kimbilio is you can also return. And I think they're currently open for submissions. We share a lot of these submissions and things. And so I think they're currently accepting submissions for them, but they are particularly fiction writers. They are fiction and short story. Okay, so to talk a little bit about costs, our work has a price, right? So, with those three different residencies, I can give you the gist of kind of how they broke down. So, for Torch, again, you were responsible for getting yourself to Austin, Texas. So that means you had to book a flight. But the reality was you were paid $1,000 stipend, which means you pretty much got your money back for the flight. Torch was really like the lowest cost like for the participants that I've experienced because your room and board was taken care of, your meals were taken care of. Um, well, breakfast and lunch were taken care of, but Amanda also had scheduled like multiple dinners throughout the week, so I feel like maybe I paid for like three of my own meals because so many of the meals were provided to us. There were just like a couple of nights you were supposed to be on your own for dinner, and then but she had scheduled, a welcome dinner and like this kind of like closing dinner and like different things. So I really didn't feel like I spent a ton. In addition to the fact that, again, I was going to get that $1,000 check at the end of it. So that was going to give me the money back for my flight. That was going to give me the money back for those meals that I had spent. So that was really I was so pleased to have been selected for that. Just knowing that it was like such a small cohort. For NAFRA, I received a partial fellowship for NAFRA, meaning that I got a discounted rate. However, it was the most expensive retreat that I went on because it was out of the country. And so had to buy my flight and also had to pay towards the room and board, but it was Italy. So I was like, I don't know when I'll be able to go back to Europe in this fashion and stay at a villa and be with writers and all inspired and all that good stuff. So it was something I was willing to make the investment in, and that I will also be writing off on my taxes because it was for business. So, those are things to think about for yourself when it comes to cost. And then last but not least, Kimbilio, because you are a fellow, most of your cost is being covered, but there is a nominal fee required from the participants. I think it was somewhere around like $300 or something like that. Even though you're staying for a week, you're paying like $300, but you're getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. You're getting your room and board. And again, if you wanted to pay to have a single room, you could pay to have pay extra to have a single room. Wasn't that important for me. And somehow I have hit the roommate jackpot every time. My roommates have been phenomenal people. We have had no challenges with roommates. Knock on wood. I hope it continues if I do other residencies. But yeah, so that's just a little just into the cost. I feel like they're gonna cost you something because sometimes you even like, so for instance at Torch, like we had a supermarket day where we were able to like go get some stuff just we wanted to keep in our room. But Amanda even provided like a basket full of snacks. So she really was like on it, taking care of the writers and being able to find that funding in that way to help like really support us. So where can you kind of find these things? I just wanted to kind of shout out some resources of like how do you find residencies and when they're open and how to apply. Galleyway.com is a great resource. The Craft is the PTW's oh, look at my typo, weekly newsletter. So I send a newsletter as a part of our permission granted membership every week. And not only does it have kind of like instructional information or just kind of like things about the publishing industry, writing craft, and just like trying to keep yourself motivated. In addition to that, at the end of every newsletter, each Monday, we send writing opportunities, whether that's writing jobs, fellowships, residencies, etc. We try to just keep people aware because I scour the internet, which is last but not least, social media. I scour the internet for these things, right? I'm always looking. I'm reading poets and writers. I am, seeing stuff on Instagram, seeing stuff shared on threads. I'm always kind of scanning for these opportunities and just adding them in to the newsletter. So you could also do the same for yourself. Um, so that is the end of my slides, and then we could talk about artist statements. But I want to pause there specifically because I want this to feel very informal. I wanted to see if there were any questions on any of that so far. Look, I hate how my ring light shows in my glasses. It's crazy.
Hello, I do have not a question, but something to ask.
Sure.
I know I've been interested in doing a a fellowship or residency for a while, but the drawback for me is being a wheelchair user, not really knowing what's accessible. Because what people claim is accessible isn't always accessible. Sometimes that information isn't always available on the website, and then you have to do a little bit more digging, which isn't great because things like that should be available, and then you can have a contact to reach out to. So I wanted to ask, when you did your, these fellowships or things, did you, even if you may not need them themselves, did you notice any accessibility information provided, or if you felt like you needed something like that, would you have felt comfortable asking the organizers? Because I know that some people may not be wheelchair users like me, but some people may have chronic illnesses where walking long distances may be, hard on the body for whatever reason, because many of us are more disabled, particularly if we're black or brown. So kind of want to bring that into the room because I think that's always been the hesitancy for me to seek out these things and wondering how much work would I have to do that really shouldn't be done on my end.
Oh, for sure. That is such a great question, and definitely it's always top of mind for me because my mother has physical limitations. So I'm always thinking about that when it comes to spaces and like accessibility and how people are able, like for instance, like my mom needs a railing to get up steps, and so like I'm always noticing places that might not have a railing because I'm like, my mom needs a railing to be able to get upstairs, you know? And so. Yes, that's a great question. So one, I'll start by saying that I have found that the great part about the ones that I have done has have been that they all been Black and POC run. And I feel like there is a sensitivity across the board when you are working with Black and POC people who own the spaces. We are like naturally more inclusive. I'm just gonna say it as plainly as that. And so I would say f first and foremost, I think that all of them, w if you reach out to them, because you know sometimes that information might not be readily available, but I do find that like for most residencies, they do have an email where you can ask any questions that aren't addressed, and I do find that most of them will be more than willing to talk about accessibility. Two, multiple retreats that I've been on actually have had folks who've had various limitations. So in Italy, we had a woman who just was a little older in age, you know, just was one of our more elder writers. And you know, we were able to, so for instance, when we were going on excursions in Lucca, or no, excursions in like Florence and Pisa, you know, there were you know, spots where we were able to say like, okay, you know, there were going to be a couple people here where this person could sit and kind of wait while other people made rounds and stuff like that. So there was a lot of accommodation for that. Um and then also during Cambilio, there was also a woman who I'm not sure exactly what her ailment was, but she wasn't able to do, even though we were on grounds that weren't like too far, she was able to get a golf cart transport to like, so for instance, like where we stayed was a little ways away from where we ate. um and so she was able to get a golf cart transport to wherever she needed to go. I will say some of the spaces are kind of tricky, but there's things they can do with like making sure you're on a ground level, you know, so you know you don't have to go up. And then there were ramps, particularly at somewhere like Kimbilio, for folks to be able to access through wheelchairs. So I would say like, you know, go for it, apply for them. Don't be afraid to ask questions at their email because all of the founders of the residencies that I've done were such gracious, wonderful people. You know what I mean? That I know would try to do anything they could outside of like if the venues just have limitations, which they shouldn't, because all of them should be ADA accessible, right? Because I mean, that's a law a lot of places, but I guess when you get into some of these smaller towns, I'm not sure how it works, but I would definitely encourage you to still apply and reach out.
Okay, no, that's great to know because sometimes you feel a little hesitant with asking for folks, but if such organizers are very warm and willing, then that's really great energy to lean into.
Yeah, and just like wanting to include like one of the things that we'll talk about when we get into the artist statement is like diversity. Like people want to see diverse groups at these retreats, like not just one type of person. And there's such beauty even in just like with age, like the emerging writer versus the seasoned writer versus the writer from a big city from a writer from a small town. Like there's so many things that I think makes a good cohort, and they're looking at a lot of that stuff, which we'll talk a little bit about in the artist statement. Cool. Anything else before we move forward? All right. Cool. I will share my screen again and we'll go through this worksheet. And like I said, I just need to put it up on a link so I can share it with you all, but I will email this to you right after this. Okay, so I put together a little bit of a worksheet to talk about writing strong personal statements. And so you know, I'm gonna go through like a couple things to think about. You don't have to answer them right now, but we'll kind of use our last time to go through a little exercise or whatever, like our last 10 minutes or so. But right now, this will just be for reference, and then you'll have this sheet for when you go to work on your own residency and fellowship application. So one of the questions to think about answering first is, what do I want this opportunity to know about me that my writing sample can't show? And so I did a kind of like a workshop like this, but it was way huger. And it was really more focused towards like TV and film writing. And it was through an organization called like Script Anatomy. And they did a writing fellowship type of workshop in this way. And one of the things they talked about was this. A lot of people are great writers. Like a lot of people. Like, and a lot of times what is going to make the difference is the supporting material. And sometimes we kind of treat the supporting material like a footnote, almost like, well, my writing sample is good, so I'm gonna just answer these questions or do this little statement and whatever. But it does you a disservice because the writing statement is actually what helps them differentiate you from the 50 million other people that are amazing writers, because there's a lot of those people. And so when you ask yourself this question, it kind of shifts you from summarizing like your resume to more of your interior. Like, who are you as a person, as an artist, and why is this work important to you? Is something that a writing sample can't tell them. There's two formats that I feel like I've seen, and if there's more, that it's just beyond my kind of knowledge bank at this point. But one has been like the open personal statement, meaning like you just kind of have to drive the narrative. So it's kind of like just give us an artist statement, where you kind of have to write one cohesive statement. It requires you to kind of organize your own narrative arc. And then it's helpful because a stronger sense of your voice kind of comes through because you're kind of directing it, but it's harder to know what to prioritize because they often have limits, right? Like anywhere between 250 to like 500 words. So you're trying to figure out how to put it all in the space. And so, for instance, the Cambilio Summer Retreat had an open artist statement. It was just somewhere between 200 and 500 words. Just tell us about you and why you want to be here. But then there's the question and answer format where sometimes they have specific questions they want you to answer. I just went through this for like a grant application. It had like four different questions that it wanted you to answer. And then, it might be somewhere around like 300 to 500 words each for those. And the structure is given to you, so you just follow that closely, answer exactly what they're asking you. Each answer kind of has its own mini statement, which is cool because you don't have to kind of have this own narrative arc. And then it's an easy entry port, but sometimes you can be repetitive in answering questions. So for example, the Torch Literary Arts application had multiple questions versus just one artist statement. So even when you're doing Q&A, it just should feel cohesive, like they come from the same voice with a clear sense of like purpose. So I'm gonna go over like what I have found to be the six components of a strong statement. The first being an identity anchor. Ground your statement in who you are as a writer, not just what you write. So name the identity, the perspective, or the experience that shapes your work that you're comfortable sharing, you know, I don't know. I'll give an example. So this is from one of my actual statements where I start by saying, as a Black writer, craft in fictional worlds. I don't run from the idea of being like a Black writer. Like I'm in the Toni Morrison train of like, I'm Black, I write for Black people, everybody else is welcome. Right? Like that, that's kind of a fine identity for me. And it immediately kind of positions me in a specific perspective. Right. So whatever that is for you, it might be something else, It might be I'm a neurodivergent writer, if that's something you're comfortable sharing. Like whatever it is, like what is that identity, I think is kind of really strong as a starting point. The creative challenge. So what is challenging you in your work? Like acknowledge, because a lot of times a residency is trying to help you like move past an obstacle in your work to like get it done. Because they want to be able to say, XYZ author, we gave them space, we invested in them, we poured into them. They want to be able to tout that, okay? We love that too as permission to write, where people are like, oh, permission to write, help me do this thing. We're like, yes, because this is so great. That's the whole purpose, right? And so you want to acknowledge what the tension or obstacle is in your current work or writing life. It really humanizes you and makes the reader lean in. And so committees or juries, they fund people navigating real creative challenges and not like the ideal artist life, right? Because if we all had the life where we could just wake up and be like writing and at our lake house, we probably wouldn't need the residency. So ask yourself, what is my current project up against? Like, what does your writing life lack that this will help fulfill? Um, Also, there's this growth and discovery moment, right? That shows that you've evolved intentionally. Name something you've learned about yourself, your craft, or what you need. This is like an idea of like self-awareness. So, over the past year, I've discovered how transformative dedicated writing spaces can be. This is actually from one of my artist statements. And what I was saying is like, I done a couple writing residencies, and I'm like, I come out of these a better writer every time. My mind is blown every time by the people I'm there with, by the people I'm learning from. I come out and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I was doing before, but I'm better now. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in this particular artist statement. For the why. They always ask you to get specific, and I gotta be honest, I hate that question because I'm like, I just want to come because I want to come. But a lot of times they do ask you like why their specific residency or fellowship. So it helps to do your research. Name the specific program and explain why it fits your needs at that exact moment. Generic praise of a program is kind of like a red flag, like you aren't genuine and didn't actually do your research, right? So, you something you might want to ask yourself is like, what does this program offer that no other could right now? And be honest about that answer. So, for instance, Cambilio, as specific for Black fiction, right, is like, I want to be a part of that, because it caters exactly to who I hope to be in the world, right? There's something very specific about something like a Cambilio versus an Afro or Torch or Hedgebrook or Yato or any of these fellowships that we have. Um, Five is dual motivation. What you need from the residency, but also what you bring, right? Like that's interesting too, because I think like sometimes you kind of come to it and you're like, yeah, I need this, but it's a good question to say, what do you also bring to it? And so a strong statement to me balances the personal and the communal, not just what you need from the experience, but what will you contribute to the cohort. Again, fellowships fund people, not just manuscripts. So this is an idea of like how to make that really tangible. This was from one of my artist statements where I said, I'm invigorated by writing and craft, and I also come with experience as a debut author. Right now, your thing might be something else. But one thing that I feel like I've added value to these residencies is because oftentimes folks aren't published yet. Or they might have published maybe like some articles or short stories, which is great. I'm still trying to publish short stories. So I'm learning from them about how to be a great short story writer, while they are also learning from me because I have had the experience of publishing with a traditional publisher. So. What is your thing? Like, are you a great like mama bear, that brings community to whatever space you walk in? Do you have some other experience that maybe isn't writing but lends itself to being in a group? If it's one of these residencies where you gotta cook, maybe you're like, I'm gonna make some good food. I don't know about those because normally when I'm going to a residency, I don't want to cook a thing. Um, but some of these have like group meals where someone has to cook each day. Whatever your thing is that you bring to the table, don't be afraid to talk about what you would bring to it as well. And then number six is just legacy positioning, right? Like close by connecting your work to something larger than yourself, right? Like what is the reason your work kind of needs to be in the world, whether it's a tradition, a community, a conversation in literature, something that you're broaching. I go pick on Davita a little bit. I know she is writing about the South. To me, that is legacy positioning, like writing about Black people in the South, is a particular perspective and point of view. And so don't be afraid to really claim that about your place in the literary world within your statement. So, this was from my Cambilio artist statement where I said, I see Cambilio as more than a retreat. It's an opportunity to join a legacy of Black literary voices. And I meant that because people like Deisha Filial have been Kimbies. People like authors like Angela Flournoy have been Kimbies. And I'm like, I'm trying to have the careers that those people have. So I need this experience. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. So um those are just some important things to think about. Um, Three tensions to navigate, and then I'll let you all go through the questions on your own, but we'll kind of jump to um, common mistakes, and then we'll do our workshop activity. But um, I wanted to highlight where your personal statement can be weak. And believe me, I've written weak personal statements where I did not get into the fellowship or residency. But being specific versus universal. So too specific can read like a diary entry, while too universal can read like a cover letter. The sweet spot is a specific experience that opens up into a larger truth about your writing. Which is like to me very true for writing in general, right? Like that we sometimes write like personal essays or things like that, and they're so specific to an experience that we have, but oftentimes as we go through the story, we are linking it into our broader perspective. One thing that residency of fellowship workshop that I took that was film and TV really helped me to understand is like your artist statement and stuff should be a reflection of like who you are as a writer. So for instance, they gave the example of like if you're applying with a comedy, your artist statement should be funny. If you're applying for drama, your artist statement should have drama, right? Like, and so to me, the specific versus universal, the artist statement is indicative of, to me, how writing should present itself in general, in that we tell these specific stories, but they tie into universal truths. Um, Confidence versus humility. Writers either oversell themselves like they're the best thing in the world, or they undersell themselves like they're the worst writer in the world. Like, please, give me this opportunity. And it's like, no, you're looking for the opportunity, but you bring something to the table. And so a strong statement has to like hold both. Like, I know who I am, but also the self-awareness of knowing what you need. And then lastly, here is the work versus the writer. Again, kind of rehashing this idea that fellowships fund people, not just manuscripts. So the statement has to make both your project and your personhood visible because the personhood is what makes you interesting. Um, I will let you all run through these on your own when I send these to you after this. But just some more common mistakes to avoid. Summarizing the manuscript instead of talking about the making of it. Committees want to know the writer, not just the book. Generic flattery of the program with no specificity, excuse me, it signals that the writer hasn't actually done their homework. So when I send opportunities in the weekly newsletter, it's literally like a paragraph of what that opportunity is. The idea is that you're gonna click on it and read more about what it is, maybe find out who some of the other fellows were. Like, I saw other people who were part of the program and I was like, oh wow, this is really great. Like, do your research. Um, Starting with I'm a writer who is flat and expected, like lead with something that creates some type of momentum. Even sometimes starting with like a story kind of works too as you kind of get into it. Um Sometimes you can fall into forgetting that the reader is looking for a person. In Q&A formats, you want to make sure you don't repeat the same information. And then writing to impress rather than connect. You can have a lot of pretty prose that says absolutely nothing. Make sure that it's polished and well written, but that your personhood and vulnerability is also coming through. All right, so I wanted to give us some time here to actually work on something, and then we could come back and go through any questions. So I actually want you to, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna leave these on the screen for us to pick from. So you're gonna pick one question at the top, and write 3 to 5 sentences. Don't edit, just write it. And then what we'll do instead of sharing with a partner is like either you can share it just in the group, or you don't have to. I kind of don't like when I'm forced to share, but if you would like to share, you can. But I do want to give us just a minute to like pick one of these questions. So for an open statement format, because what also is helpful too is writing a generic statement that you can then edit for the specific opportunity. That is another hack trick that I have done for myself. And you refresh it annually. Like I said, spring is a big season for a lot of these applications. So you kind of work on it and then you save that and then you come back to it the next year, you refresh it. Maybe you've done some cool stuff or whatever, you add to it, and you just have a foundation that you could start with. So I want you to pick one of these questions and spend the next 5 minutes writing to one of them. So I'll give you the questions here. What does your current project need that your everyday life can't give it? What kind of writer do you want to become, and what stands between you and that? Why this residency and not another if you already have a residency in mind? Um, Let me see if I could do that. I'll see if I could copy them into the chat. And then what would you bring to the cohort, not just take from it? Or last, you could pick where does your work fit in the larger conversation of literature you care about? So pick one of these questions and spend the next 5 minutes answering them. And I will see if I could drop them in the chat. And just a FYI, I will send this worksheet to you for your reference after this. All right, so just pick one of these. We'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. You can share if you want. If not, we'll just take questions before we wrap up. Right, so that is roughly our 5 minutes. That seemed like it flew by. Oh, hopefully you got a chance to write a few sentences there. Was there anyone who wanted to share?
I'll go. Hi, Ashley. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Um, okay, so I'll start this with a preface. I feel like when it's time to write these things, I get like way too, ooh, I gotta, like you said, like trying to wow the people instead of just saying what it is. But the question I wanted to try was, where does your work fit into the larger conversation of literature you care about? Because that is why I'm doing this, because whatever. So my thing is, I wrote, it is clear to me that we live in a time where if people don't like some aspect of their past, they can just erase it or pretend it didn't happen or craft a narrative that reflects an experience they can't accept. That is not an accurate source of our history. My work is here to recall, not revise, moments from my life that are relatable to my generation and can provide a sense of pride to those who came before me and a bit of a roadmap to those who follow. My work is here to keep it real in a chapter of our history that is obsessed with fake news. My creative nonfiction is embedded in the truth and enhanced by literary tools and devices that explore storytelling. My work is real.
I love that.
Okay,
That's
I can't hear you.
Oh, I said I love that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And
Thank
that is so great because it's honest, right? And it's relatable. Lord knows we in the fake news era of of all the things. So perfect. I love that you are having that self-awareness that you might be performing the writing instead of telling the truth of the work, which I already know is so beautiful because I've gotten to bear witness to a lot of your process over the time. So lovely. Anyone else want to
I had a
share?
question. I had a
Oh, sure.
question. Um, does it make, is it like weird to specifically name artists that you like want to join the tradition, right? Like if you're like, oh, like this artist, this artist, this artist, like they do the kind, like I want to join that tradition. Like this is the kind of work. Is that weird? Like, does that feel off of like, yeah, like I'm joining like blah, blah, blah.
Well, I don't think it's odd. I would be careful how much space other people take up in my word count, you know? But I don't think it's odd to, do you mean specifically speaking to like other folks who might have participated?
No, I'm saying like, uh,
Like your literary heroes, essentially.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's odd at all. And I think it helps kind of people put your work in perspective. I would just not do too long of a list. That's it.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Hmm. Awesome. Did anyone else want to share before we go to just general questions?
I do. I am like many Black women in films, got 1,001 projects that I am working on.
Mhm.
And I kind of thought about a similar question that was done before about your kind of impact on literature. So I was thinking of my answer in a way as to why I'm writing for this project a particular comic book. Um, and so I'm just going to read it. So I say, as a budding comic book writer, my aim is to flip the way the horror genre views disability and disabled bodies and minds and lives. Instead of disability itself being viewed as the monstrosity, it is the way we view disabled people that is the true villain in society. The ableism in the genre is misguided, and my comic book will be some fresh air as to how we talk about disability and correcting the ableism for readers who enjoy the genre in comic books. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do is kind of flip the horror genre on its head and making the ableism the villain instead of disability or disfigurement as the villain, which is what we usually see in particularly the movie version of the horror genre. So that's kind of what I wrote a little bit, like think about the larger conversation as to how ableism exists in literature and basically like the harm that's being done.
Oh, for sure. And to me, you drive that home very clearly. And what I would hope would be, you know, in addition to that, in like either an
Right.
format or like in a question, is going to be your personal experience. But that beautifully weaves it into the bigger conversation that I think a lot of people are having, right? Like, there is a writer named Gretchen something, and I can't think of her last name. But she talks about it. She talks about ableism a lot in her work as well, and representation for characters that might not be same abled as everyone else. And like I just think it ties into like such a timely conversation too. In addition to, you know, then I'm just really also interested in your personal story around it and why it's specifically important to you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was kind of thinking about the question, like you said,
Yep.
like I probably have an opener that kind of explains certain things that then kind of use that question to kind of dig deeper as to the why. Like why now? What is the impact that this story could have in the way um ableism is discussed in the genre. So thank you for catching that. I was like, I know it sounds a little kind of in the middle, but thank you for catching that in the way that I wrote it. And thank you for your feedback too. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. And Davita also just shared an opportunity in the chat that might work for that because it
Ooh,
has graphic novel or book length comic um as one of the categories.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm definitely copying this. If it's not for this year, definitely next year.
Yep, a lot of them have the same deadlines every year, so
Thank you.
um yep. Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. Those are, to me, those are really great foundations, to these stories and like, of course, how it's gonna like shift into that universal, which I think is really important. So I guess like, are there any additional questions? I mean, one thing I will say, like I said, I'll make sure to follow up with this document. I will email it to you all. I have your emails from um, your registration. I think there was one more kind of general note I wanted to make about residencies and fellowships. And if you have any other questions about like fellowships in general or my personal experience, I'm more than happy to share. But I think it was just gonna be, oh, why do we do them? One thing that I also missed is the community. And so you are gonna be in a cohort with other writers. And so one of the things that we always talk about here at Permission to Write is like, yes, the writing, right? Like that is the onus, but like you need a network and you need a community too. You need people, like for instance, I want to apply to a residency that needs references. And I'm kind of like, I hate applications that need references. But I do now have a pool of people that I can ask for a reference. And part of that is from the community building that some of this creates. And so just as much as you're gonna like learn from new instructors and make those relationships, which are great. More importantly, kind of that idea of networking across, you're going to be in a cohort with other brilliant writers, that are gonna, all of you are gonna go on to have careers in different ways. And so I wanted to not be remiss to mention that as an advantage to participating in some of these opportunities as well. I had someone do something. Yeah, Camille, who participated in our retreat in January, was a part of my residency in Anafra. So, there's just great things happening with folks that are a part of these residencies as well. But I will stop talking. Any questions? We're at the hour, but I'm more than happy to stay on and answer any other questions you might have.
I do have a question. How did you go about finding these residencies and
Mhm.
fellowships and things like that, like residency retreats and things of that nature? I know there's 1,001 places to look for these things, but particularly the BIPOC, Black or BIPOC spots as well, 'cause I think that's very important. So just kind of give an idea, like what sites, who do you follow online? I know I follow Galleyway, that has a lot of great resources. I've been kind of slowly compiling a list of things, but I'm always looking for other places that have these lists of things to kind of keep in mind and sign up for their email list and such.
Yeah, Galloway is great. And we've actually started a spreadsheet of residencies and fellowships, just trying to start compiling them. But it's in its beginning stages. I'll make sure to share a link to that after this as well with the worksheet. Um, for me, it is like my algorithm. Like I think I follow a lot of writers who also kind of post about this stuff. And then very naturally, because of permission to write, we also repost a lot of stuff in our stories. So if you're not following us on Instagram, you definitely should, because we will repost things a lot of times in our stories that are open for applications. Um, so yeah, I mean, between that and Threads is where I find a lot of things online, and just based on kind of following a lot of writers and like literary companies and like publishers, I feel like my algorithm just kind of feeds me a lot of fellowships and residencies at this point. So that's where I follow. And then Galloway is a big resource for me as well. And then I wanted to also highlight too, don't be afraid to reapply. I applied for Convilio one year and didn't get in. And then I applied another year, and I did get in. So, and even for like other retreats in the past, like there was one year I applied for a fellowship, I didn't get it. But the next year I got to the next round and I still didn't get it. But it was like if they would have continued the residency, maybe I would have got it the third time, right? Like, do not be afraid to reapply, because I think sometimes our ego gets in the way, like, well, they didn't want me the first time. But it's like there's a lot of reasons. If they're building a cohort, maybe they already had a writer in your space or whatever the case may be. Like, don't be afraid to reapply for some of these things if you applied and didn't get it. And then I think once you start following to some of the retreats, so follow like Torch and follow Cambilio, you'll also start to get like more opportunities as well. Shares opportunities in their newsletter too. So I would sign up. Like they share opportunities outside of their own retreat. Um, and I think the same for Cambodia. Cool. Any last questions before we wrap up? I just want to make sure if there was anything burning that you got to ask it before we wrap up. I will take the silence as golden. Like I said, I will email you follow up with this worksheet and with that resource of residencies that we've already collected. Um, if you're not already a member of Permission Granted, I would look into that as well, since we're always trying to support writers and share opportunities through that as well. So, yeah, we'll definitely try to, we're trying to like do more things more often, with a low lift, that feel really easy and simple. And so we'll definitely keep you abreast of those. I know most of you are already on the newsletter, so we're always sharing those things in the newsletter as well. So thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday and good luck with those applications.